Welcome back to Legally Uncensored. I'm your host, Demetria Graves, and on this podcast, we are untangling hearts and unveiling truths and having uncensored conversations on divorce, family law, relationships, and beyond. I am a trusted family law attorney with a practice in Pasadena, California, known as the Graves Law Firm. This season, we will navigate relationships with strength, strategy, and resilience. That is not just divorce, but the many stages of relationships to prepare you for a better future. In this episode, we know the importance of providing resources for those seeking solutions to marital issues outside of heading to divorce court, and also traditional counseling. So we have a special guest today, therapist Ziba Graham Jr., the author of Your Marriage Without Counseling, which is a valuable resource for anyone who rather seeks solutions than wallow in their problems. So whether you are in the midst of a divorce or ready for a new chapter for love, we are always looking at ways to prepare you for better relationships before you make it to my office. Ziba Graham has an MBA from Indiana University, a master's in social work. In addition to writing numerous articles on relationships, he is the author of 2 previous books, Better Than a Stick in the Eye, and God, Church, Life, and Other Essays. So please help me welcome Mr. Graham. Hi, Ziba. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, hi. Well, it's really good to be with you today.
Thank you. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, something I didn't cover.
Well, I started out after school. I was in the military for 3 years in the Navy. And after that, I got an MBA and then I was in a farming business, family farm in southern Indiana. And I did that for about 21 years. After that, I went back to school and got a master's in social work. And then I started doing marriage counseling. And it was quite a change for me, obviously. But I think that what I brought to marriage counseling was a real desire to help people get better and to help solve, their relationship conflicts. And so it's been a really good, interesting journey for me. Kathy and I have been married for 54 years, and we've got 3 children and 6 grandchildren. So we've been doing this quite a long time.
You sound very, very busy.
Yeah, I am very busy.
So I like to share with the people that are watching or listening to us, from a professional standpoint, what are some of the unique challenges that did you or do you see couples face when they're going through challenges in their marriage?
You know that they're all different kinds of challenges. And I kind of look at them as in a couple of different ways. One thing is that sometimes people come in and actually they've forgotten how to resolve their conflicts. When they first are married, it seems like they try extra hard, but they don't have a lot of other things that are impinging, on their life. And then all of a sudden, children come along, people change jobs, family members die, things just change. And so they kind of forgotten sometimes how to work out things. And then also with all these changes coming in that they've never really had these challenges before. So it really sometimes puts a big stress on their marriage. And it's just a matter of kind of relearning how to get along, relearning how to resolve conflicts. And this is, the average person, the couple that used to come and see me are people that were, in good marriages, but they just got to the place where they had conflicts. And then when they have conflicts, that leads to resentment. And then it leads to intentional hurts and arguing, and things just kind of spin out of control. And so that's where they were when they came to see me.
So, what are the key stages that relationships go through?
Well, there are a lot of course, this is a well-researched field. And, you have certain stages that they go through: the honeymoon stage, the commitment stage, the disillusionment stage, reconciliation. And all those stages sometimes are present together. Sometimes it's not, doesn't really come up as a problem. But on the other hand, sometimes they just get stuck. And all of a sudden, then when that happens, things just kind of deteriorate to the place where sometimes they don't see any other avenue to get out. And so, there they are and coming to see me. and then there I am trying to help them resolve a lot of these conflicts that they're having.
How do you think understanding these different stages can help couples in navigating their challenges?
Well, I think one thing is that it's important to realize that that these different stages are very normal. So you can kind of normalize them, and if you're kind of aware of them before they happen, then you say, well, here we go. Now we're going from the honeymoon phase to the commitment phase. And then if you sometimes get real disillusioned and you're questioning a lot of things, you say, well, this is to be expected. And a lot of times just recognizing that going through the different stages is normal, then you realize that, it's just not too different, and everybody pretty much goes through those stages. And so it's a matter of working your way through, and not realizing that it's just not the end of the world, that you can work through this as long as you give it a try.
I think a lot of people, especially these days, want to stay in the honeymoon phase, and that creates a lot of problems. With that said, in your experience, what are the most critical elements that make a healthy relationship?
Well, I think that the most critical element that I've run into is when people come in to see me, they're conflicted. They've got conflicted in different ways. Sometimes, when two people get married, each one has certain things that they do or don't do, and all of a sudden they have another person in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes hard for them to just kind of change enough so that they can get along. And so really what I found is trying to help them work through their conflicts on everything. I mean, you can be conflicted on lots of things. People think they're not getting enough help, or somebody else feels like, they are not accustomed to the kind of food that the other person cooks, or that they're not accustomed to bedtimes, or if somebody wants to stay up and watch a football game and drink 4 beers and have the dog eating the popcorn, that's fine as long as they clean up. But in the morning, if you don't clean up after yourself, you're in big trouble. So, it's a new day.
Right. Right. So on our show, we talk a lot about the importance of counseling, and we've had a lot of people come on and talk to us about how much counseling has worked for them. But we know, you and I, that counseling doesn't work for everyone. And for whatever reason, um, we want to show couples that there are other methods to kind of navigate their issues without counseling. And I tend to see that men are a little more reluctant to go to counseling. Why do you think that is?
Well, that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
Men just don't. They just are very reluctant to go to counseling. I think it comes from a couple of different things.
Mm-hmm.
One is most times you have a female counselor, and then the wife, and then the husband, and the counselor and his wife kind of do all the talking, and he just sits there
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't really know how to respond, because a lot of times just talking about, especially going to the past and talking about, past hurts or past problems, just makes him more stressful.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of men, they just, talking makes them stress. And so a lot of times what would happen, maybe they would come in the first time and then he didn't want to come in again because, all this talking about the past and all. And then he just felt like he was made to be kind of the main reason that everything was not just right. And a lot of times he is the main reason. But they kind of feel like they're kind of being, beaten up on a little bit. And so that's why I tried to steer my time with them more toward the way a man would kind of think about things.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I found out, that going to the past and reviewing every little mistake and every little thing was not really doesn't really work. And the main reason it doesn't work is nobody can agree on what the problem is. Everybody has a little different idea. It was this or it's that, or, I told him I was sorry, but that doesn't seem to be enough. And the more that we talked about the problem or problems, this seems like the bigger that they got,
Mm-hmm.
until they just seemed so big and so overpowering that almost it was like, well, there's no way we can get out of this. And so what I did is I decided to just change the whole way I was doing things. And instead of talking about the problem or trying to find out what the problem was, I tried to help them see in the future. And I would start asking them questions. Well, what if in the future this problem wasn't there? So what would be different in your relationship? So I kind of skipped the problem part.
Mm-hmm.
And then I developed this method where I would help them look to the future. And so that's kind of where I started right there, is to just not talk about the problem as much. And I found out that the men were more future oriented and were much more likely to come to counseling.
I love this method. So you're more of visualizing the future without this problem. But even with that, and I love that this method, how do you fix the problem? If we're focusing on visualizing what it looks like without the problem, how do we fix the problem?
Okay, so what I would do is, I finally realized that the main problem, so to speak, is that they had conflicts. And the conflicts would be about, just about anything. It could be about money, it can be about helping, with children, it could be about anything. And, a lot of times I was like, well, why do they have so much problem, working through their conflicts? And so what I found out is that as a child, if for instance your parents are divorced, you never saw them work through their conflicts, resolving their conflicts. But then I found out that even if you are from an intact marriage and your parents got along great, you still didn't know how to resolve conflicts because you never really saw them resolving their conflicts. Maybe, they would get a little bit irritated with one another and they would take a walk out in the back and they'd come back and they were okay again. Or maybe they would jump in the car and, get a babysitter, go out, come back. And when they came back, it seemed like that they had just kind of resolved these conflicts. So I think that one of the first things I did was to educate the couple on how to resolve conflicts.
I think that's amazing. I actually think that's something that should be taught in school on navigating conflict and dealing with conflict. And so because we're speaking to the person that, and a lot of times men that don't like counseling. In addition to navigating conflict, what are three things that maybe you would say to those that don't want to come to counseling?
Well, for one thing, I like to use short-term counseling. I think that sometimes you can get totally dependent on the counselor and to the place where you just can't make your own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So what I tried to do is I tried to give them the strength and the reasons and how to resolve conflicts. So what the main thing that I found the problem is everybody is accustomed to the scientific method of solving problems. It's what we learn in school. It's what everybody uses. To do problems in the scientific method, you go back to the problem, you find the facts, you go to the past, and you try to find the answer. You identify the problem, and the expert has the problem, and it's a systematic thing. And if you go through that scientific method, I don't think that it works very well with people.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a new method, and my method is, instead of a problem, I call it a conflict. Instead of facts, it's about feelings. Instead of the past, I want to go to the future. Instead of looking for weaknesses, I go to the strengths. Instead of problems, I go to solutions. Instead of answers, I go to questions. And I don't ID the problem. And I discovered that the couple can find their own way through, and it's a process of discovery. And the other thing is I try not to find fault, because the minute you try to find a fault, that just, it just kind of breaks it up.
Right.
So this is the method I use. And I would get people together and just go through this method. And the thing is I discovered is I had the questions if they have the answers. Mm-hmm. So all I had to do was have the questions. Besides that, every time I had the answer, they never did it anyway. You know what I mean? Say, no, we're not going that. I sounded too much like mom.
Right.
I said, oh, this is something my mother told me, and you're just saying the same thing. So that couldn't be right.
So why do you think this method may be more beneficial for those going through a divorce?
Well, the thing is what I did is I figured out how to ask them the right question. And when you ask a person the right question, you always know it's the right question when they really have to think for a minute before they answered it. So some of the questions that I would start with was, where is your marriage right now on a scale of 1 to 10? A 1 being the worst it could be, a 10 being the best it could be. And usually, if they came to see me, they were about a 3 or a 4. So then I would say, well, where would you like it to be? And they would say, oh, I'd like my marriage to be about a 7, at least maybe a 7 or 7.5. So I didn't say anything to them, but if they're a 4 and they wanted to be a 7, that's only 3 points. So then I would say, where would you need to be satisfied? They would say a 7. And I would ask them, how willing are you to do your part to help to go up to a 7? And how confident are you that if you did your part, it would go up? And then another question is, what's the highest you've ever been? Mm. So when I asked them what was the highest they've ever been, they'd say, oh, when we were first married, we were like a 9.5. So they had some background on being higher. Mm-hmm. So then I would say, what could your spouse do to help you go up maybe a 1 point or a half a point? So I would say, like I would always start with the woman and say, what could he do? Because she was more receptive to this kind of thing. What right. could he do to help you go up a half a point? And she would say, well, he would help the kids with their math homework. And what else could he do to help you go up a half a point? Well, he could be on time for dinner. What else could he do? He could stop complaining about my mom. Oh, how much would you go up if he stopped complaining? He'd say, she'd say, I'll go up a whole point. So how much? And then I would keep asking till she couldn't think of anything more. Mm. So there was a whole list there. Okay. Some were half a point or a quarter of a point. Okay. Then I would ask him where he thought the marriage was. He would usually say, oh, about a 6, 6.5. That was kind of typical because he never realized that she was a 3 or a 4. Mm-hmm. So then I would ask him, or I would ask her, well, the first time when I asked her, then I would say what he could do, and then what could you do go up to help yourself go up a half a point? Mm. And they would always say, well, I'd start my exercise program again or something of that sort. So then I would ask them, all about these points. Well, and then I would say, okay, we're finished. And then a week later when they came in, I would say, what's better? And she would say, well, he did about 3 of those things that he suggested. And the thing is, the more I figured out that the more things that she suggested, the more likely he was to pick out some of the things that were easiest for him to do. And now they're started up on the scale. And then she would say, bless his heart, he's trying.
That's a great way to kind of shift the focus. So with this method, what success have you seen with couples, and not only outlining what their spouse can do, but outlining what they can do and kind of working from this list? What success do you see in couples with this method?
Well, to tell you the truth, I had too much success because after about the 3rd time, they would say, we're okay now. But what I found is if I use the scaling method that I've developed, and things would get better right away. Mm. And that was always the first thing when I knew it was working, when she said he's trying. Mm-hmm.
What do you do with the couples that maybe one partner is trying to execute the task on the list and one partner is not? How do you bring them together in those circumstances?
So that's really a hard one, because sometimes the hurts are so great that it's really hard to forgive, even though the person says they were sorry, and let's move on. And that's really hard to overcome. But what I've found is that through a marriage, people have had positive experiences, and all of a sudden if the positive outweighs the negative, then they can kind of get back to where they can forgive that person and move along. And another tool that I used is the miracle question.
Mm.
And the miracle question goes like this: if a miracle happened in your life and all of a sudden your marriage was a 10 or a perfect marriage, tell me about what that would be like when you first woke up in the morning. And so, what I would do is ask them to give me just a rendering of their miracle day. So, let's say this is your miracle day. What would happen when you woke up in the morning? They would say things like, well, I would wake up and I wouldn't hit the snooze button, but I'd get up, I'd look over, and he is not in bed. And then I would get up and I would look around and I would hear quiet voices downstairs at breakfast. And I could hear he was telling them to get their homework together and they were having breakfast. Then I jumped in the shower, took a shower, came back, the beds were made. Then I would come down and everybody have their homework and I would take him to school, he would go, and then I would get a telephone call from him during work. He knows right when my break time is, and he would call me, and then he would say, "I appreciated that little note that you put in my lunchbox, the one that said I love you, babe. I'll see you tonight." And then when I got home, he would come home on time, and he would sit down, go through the homework with the kids, then we would chat a little bit, and it would be very quiet in our house. And then I would say, have any of those things happened ever on your miracle day? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I used to put a note in his mailbox. He used to call me. He used to make the bed. He used to get the kids into school. But, they've kind of forgotten those things. So all of a sudden, parts of those miracles are already happening. And so now they have a whole new idea about, how to get back on track. And I found that was very, very effective.
I think that is great. I think the miracle day question and your approach to identifying the immediate issues of a marriage are extremely important, especially for those that are knocking on divorce door. I think that there's a place for traditional therapy, and I think it does help. May it be individual therapy, may it be therapy when couples just need kind of a refresher in their marriage. But I think this is very, very useful if there is a problem, a raging problem, if you may, for either party to address it right away. So as we close out, what are some of your last tips for those that have immediate problems and probably definitely need your method and can't necessarily come and sit in your office?
Well, the thing is when I retired from active counseling, I decided, I think I can put this in a book.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I got my book. And then I thought, I need to get the men's attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said, fix. They love to fix stuff. Fix your marriage without counseling. And they don't like to go to counseling, but they like to fix stuff.
Right.
And then I had a wonderful lady that helped me, and she said, how about a little, subtitle, a method that men will appreciate.
Yes.
And so I wrote this kind of for the guys to get them, get them on the ball and get them to get back to be, a good father, a lover, and someone that really cares about their marriage. And I put it all down in this book. It's all laid out, and it's very simple. It tells you the questions to ask, how you relate to the questions. And in the back, I have a whole series of typical question and answer system between Bob and Sue. So it follows Bob and Sue as they go along, helping their marriage using this ZG method, using my method. And I've had a lot of good responses from this, and people get better. Uh, and 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 then sometimes people can't get to counseling, and sometimes they're they don't want to go back to the past. The past is just too painful,
Yes.
even to tell a counselor. So this way, nobody really knows what the problem was, and they just can get on their own. They can get back together on their own, and hopefully, working together, we can all reduce the divorce rate in our country.
I love that. And I will join you in that. Believe it or not, as a divorce lawyer, I would still love to see couples focus on working through their differences rather than knocking on my door and heading to divorce court. With that said, where can we all buy your book?
Oh, my book's available on Amazon, or you can get it at your favorite bookstore. They have it, or they can get it, or you can get it at Walmart.com. So it's Fix Your Marriage Without Counseling, and it's got all my little tricks in there and how to get them, thinking about the future and how to resolve conflicts and how to get going again.
I think I'm going to start offering this as a resource for my clients as well. I really love the what can we do right now method. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. And for our listeners, thank you for joining us on Legally Uncensored. I'm your host, Demetria Graves, and I hope today's episode with Ziba Graham Jr. left you with some powerful tools and insights for strengthening your relationships.